In pandemic time, divorce is becoming such a great reality. Religious communities need to respond.
Divorce may be inevitable, but faith communities can help in the healing.
The American Religious Town Hall is now in session.
Welcome, friends, to the American Religious Town Hall meeting, where the discussion of religious, political, and social issues is meant to promote the cause of religious freedom and to help us better understand each other. And now, here's your host and moderator, Pastor Jerry Lutz.
I'm James Weingartner, sitting in for Pastor Jerry Lutz, and we have a COVID edition with fewer panelists for more social distancing, and I'd like them to introduce themselves to you, beginning with Reverend Tom Plumbley on my right.
I'm Tom Plumbley. I'm the senior minister at First Christian Church in Fort Worth, Texas. Our congregation is a part of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ.
My name is Rabbi Dan Levin. I serve as senior rabbi at Temple Bethel in Boca Raton, Florida.
My name is Canon John Peterson. I am a priest in the Episcopal Church, and I'm canonically resident in the Diocese of Washington, D.C.
Hi, I'm Carl TROVALL. I'm professor of ethics and history at Concordia University in Austin, Texas.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. We have an important topic today, and our topic is about divorce in the church and the reality of divorce. A report by Legal Templates in July of 2020 tracked the unprecedented rise in separations and divorce during COVID-19. According to this report, 31% of couples said that quarantining had been damaging to their relationship. Their study also showed that the more recent the marriage, the greater the likelihood of separation. In April to June of 2019, 11% of newlyweds pursued a divorce after 5 months of marriage. During that same period in 2020, that figure climbed to 20%. This and other studies seem to mirror similar studies in other countries. These figures are in the context of other interesting shifts in divorce rates. In the 1980s, the divorce rate was around 50%, although official rates have been on the decline overall. According to Pew Research, divorces amongst those who over age 50 has doubled since the 1990s. Even with the decline, studies suggest that many separate and do not formally divorce or get married later, limiting the early divorce numbers. Overall, it seems that marriage is in a crisis, and the fragility in many relationships has been evidenced even more with the pressures attached to a pandemic. The panel is asked to consider some following questions, and we have 4 of them. Number 1, in the context of biblical and Torah view of the sanctity of marriage, how should faith communities relate to the challenges of many failing marriages? 2, what do you think is causing the fragility in so many relationships? Number 3, is there anything more faith communities can do to assist in building stronger marriage relationships? With the reality of such, and 4, with the reality of such a high level of divorces, what should faith communities do to support those involved in broken relationships? And we begin our discussion again with Tom.
Thank you. I'm caught by the one of the first statements that you made in your moderator statement, where you talk when you simply ended a sentence by saying during COVID-19. COVID-19 is a disease, and not everybody who is in this period has the disease or has even been close to the disease, and yet it is fair to speak of during COVID-19 because I think historians will look back and understand this is an era. COVID-19 itself is an era, and there are peculiar social phenomena that are beginning to be recognized as characterizing this period, this era. And a rise in the divorce rate is one of them. I come to this subject with family experience, not personal experience of divorce. My wife and I have been married for 45 and a half years, and both my sons are happily married, but one of them is married to a family law attorney. I often kid her that I put families together and she tears them apart. She does a lot of divorces. She does a lot of child custody work. And during COVID-19, during this era, she has been working herself to death. She has, luckily, because my son, on the other end of things, has lost his job in the oil industry, but enough family information. But I called her as I was preparing for this program, and I said, you know, you're my resident expert on what's going on. And I said, what's the single greatest cause of divorce, of the rise of the divorce rate that you're seeing during this time? And she said, these are her words, they're all going bonkers. She said, every little annoyance, because we're all close together, because so many more people are having to be in the same house together, and the regular release of pressure that comes when people go out and you know, travel however far they have to travel to go to work. They get away from each other for a period every day. That's no longer there, and it's like the weekend all week, every week for months at a time. And she said that, and this is a direct quote, it's like COVID has made everyone lose their minds. They can't help themselves. They get into arguments about, well, should we allow the kids to be a part of this activity? Should we allow the kids to be a part of this other activity? And they argue about it. Should we go over, you know, my parents want us to come visit them. Well, my parents want us to stay home because they think that it's dangerous to get out. And so there are arguments about literally everything, some related to other activities that have been changed within the family's lifestyle, some related directly to the danger of the virus itself. But it's just amazing, she says, that folks just seem not to be able to help themselves. And that's the point at which I said then to her, religious communities must step in and give people the tools to do that.
Very good. Thank you, Dan.
So in Jewish tradition, I think there's a different perspective on divorce than in some other religious traditions, where if you look at the Talmud, you'll see there's a big, thick volume called Kiddushin, which is how you get married, and there's an equally thick volume called Gittin, which is how you get divorced. And there was an understanding that relationships, marriage was a sacred thing. The Hebrew word for marriage, Kiddushin, means holy things. And the reason why marriage is such a holy thing is because when two people look at each other and they say, hey, there are other people out there. There are other good-looking people out there. There's other people out there with whom I might be very compatible or who I might fall in love with. But you know what? I get one shot at this life and I choose you. wow, right? But one of the things that I think we've gotten lost, and I think that in some ways faith communities haven't done enough with this, and I think it's because people are not always so deeply ensconced in faith communities that they miss this piece, is that love is the easy part. Anybody can be in love, and you can be in love with more than one person at a time. After you answer the love question, then you have to ask a much more important question, which is, can I build a household? In Judaism, when you get married, you stand beneath a canopy called a chuppah, which is symbolic of the home you create together. Marriages are about creating households. And households are created based on ideas of shared values, shared principles, shared goals, shared ideals. And I think that sometimes the conversations about, well, what are your goals and how do you spend money and how should we develop the tools to deal with conflict resolution and communication skills get lost and aren't really developed because we're so in love. And those realities of what it means to be able to build a strong household that can manage stress also, I think, get lost. And so what happens is I think that, look, divorce is an incredibly traumatic thing for everyone involved. And our legal system makes it far more traumatic, I think, most of the time than it probably ever really needed to be. And for children, it's also traumatic. But what we sometimes forget is that staying in a failed marriage is also traumatic. And kids only learn what a marriage is supposed to look like by watching their parents be married. And so if parents are modeling unhappiness, if they're modeling stress, if they're modeling anxiety and anguish, then children never really learn what it's supposed to look like in a healthy, productive, successful relationship. And so I think that what religious communities need to do are a variety of things. One is, we need to start encouraging people to get married within religious contexts again. There's so many times I get a call from somebody who said, my cousin asked me to do their wedding. And I said, well, have you ever done a wedding before? They said, no, that's why I'm calling you, right? I said, well, it's interesting. They didn't call you to do their taxes. They didn't call you to do anything else. But now suddenly you're able to celebrate a marriage because all they're thinking about is the ceremony. They're not thinking of the premarital counseling that needs to go before it. And secondly, we need to deal with the grief aspects that divorce always brings up. The loss of family, the loss of community. I think what happens a lot of times I've seen in my congregation is that two people get divorced and one of them says, oh, do I need to go find another synagogue? Because my spouse is more active here than I was, and maybe, friends take sides. And I think what faith communities need to do is to figure out how to expand the tent to allow both parts of that couple to be able to find a space in community that nurtures and helps both of them to heal and move forward.
Professor Carl, you were mentioning that you have some advice for young married Christians.
Yeah, I do. I was just teaching a class before the show. I mean, this is the advantage of being teaching online, right? Is you can do it anywhere now. So, and there's a couple that's going to get married in the class, and they were asking what programs were on today, and I was saying, well, this is one of them, and I said, I have some suggestions for you, and that is, I said, I wish I had known this earlier, but find a marriage counselor, even in your pre-marriage counseling, whether it's your rabbi or your pastor or someone who knows marriage, and be able to have them as a resource, because if you have a strong marriage, really, counseling can make it even stronger and make it even better, particularly when you need to be resilient for a crisis like this. I mean, I was shocked in the research of this that, first of all, past pandemics have shown that this is common. This is not like somehow unusual for us that all these divorces are happening. And this was even first seen in China before it got to the West in this pandemic. And I was really shocked about that. And the divorce rate continues to increase even in the year or two after the pandemic ends. So in other words, this is a pretty serious thing that we need to really get a handle on. I don't think I was quite aware of it before this program, of the depth of the serious concern. So I think this finding a resource to help you work through the struggles of your marriage are really important.
Thank you. John?
Thank you. I certainly have appreciated the insights that each person has brought to this contribution. And I think that one of the things I want to say at the very beginning is that we are facing this problem basically because we have to be so close together. Mm-hmm. We're all sheltering in some way. And this sheltering has no outside access or support, and therefore people are feeling overwhelmed by simply the parenting responsibilities that they have with their children, no schools, for example, the parenting responsibilities, the lack of child care, and people who are able to help in the child care, and therefore and of course the loss of jobs. So many people within the family units have lost their jobs in economics, and this just causes chaos within the marriage. But one of the problems is that this has also been an example of a situation in which marriages that have not been worked upon for many years all of a sudden face that reality of having to live together all the time.
Yeah.
And that creates a problem as well, because when you're just so busy with all the different activities, et cetera, that a family is involved in today in normal times, whatever that might mean, all of a sudden to be put into this situation of quarantine or whatever, and the marriage has not been worked on, and you haven't dealt with issues as a couple, then that really causes problems. I also want to say that in all the things I read in preparation for this program, there is no percentage in relationship to if more people who are of a religious tradition are getting divorces in contrast to people who have none. Now, maybe those statistics are out there, but I certainly could not find it. So what we're really talking about is a pretty level field in relationship to divorce and what's involved in divorces today. Only one other thing I want to say. We have been speaking about the problems of divorce and the great rifts in families. The American Family Institute survey of the American Enterprise Institute does not hold to this belief that we're talking about around the table today. This neoconservative think tank is not seeing in their research the types of issues that we're seeing, and therefore comes at this and understands this from a very different point of view than what we're discussing around the table today.
Thank you, Dan.
So I think that you said something, Canon, that is really, I think, insightful, which is that the pandemic may have added stressors to a lot of families, and those stressors are really tremendous. If you think about the stresses that families, individuals are holding, they're worried about getting sick, and they're worried about the economic calamity that has impacted so many people, and they're parenting nonstop, and now they're trying to homeschool their children, and they're dealing with, there was a bit of a fractious election. I don't know if anybody noticed that. And a lot of people were carrying a lot of anxiety and stress around the election as well. I mean, all of that, people and my friends who are in mental health told me that they do not have enough time in the day to see as many clients as want to see them. But what I think all that stress did, in addition to causing a lot of stress on those households, is it exposed all the underlying weaknesses that were there.
Right.
And I think, Dr. Trovall, what you said was so important, which is that if I had a tax issue and I wasn't sure how to fill in my tax forms or how to plan, I'd call my accountant. If I had a medical issue, if I wasn't feeling good, I'd call my doctor. And I wouldn't feel any stigma about calling these professionals to help me. But why do we suddenly feel stigma about calling a licensed marriage and family therapist to help me sort out my household?
Yeah.
You know, we should get rid of the stigma around mental health. We need to get rid of the stigma around the idea that only unhealthy marriages seek counseling. In the same way, I go to the dentist a few times a year to keep my teeth healthy. I go to the doctor once a year for a checkup so I stay healthy. People should be availing themselves of the services of marriage and family therapists so that they stay healthy in their households too.
Very good. Tom?
Yeah, just very briefly, I thought it was very helpful to note that religious communities, folks that are in religious communities, are divorcing at about the same rate as those that are outside of them, and that tells us something about the fact that yes, folks might be availing themselves of their rabbis, their imam, their minister for the marriage, for the wedding itself, but not for any sort of preparation time. and not for any sort of strengthening activity, or the religious communities are not providing that. They're just saying, wow, it's good to have this young couple here, or this couple, period, of whatever age or whatever variety.
Thank you, Tom. Let's cut to a break and we'll be right back.
We hope you are enjoying today's program. If you would like to learn more about the American Religious Town Hall, please visit our website at americanreligious.org. That's americanreligious.org. There you can read about the mission and history of the program, learn about the Town Hall estates, and view past programs by clicking the appropriate menu buttons. Each week, Pastor Lutz looks forward to receiving your letters. You may write to him at the address shown on your screen. Send your letters to Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. That's Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. Thank you for writing, and thank you for watching. And now, back to you and today's closing statements.
Welcome back. We thank our sponsor, the Town Hall Estates, and we really do want to hear from you about shows that you'd like to hear that are relevant. And now we give each of our panelists an opportunity to make some final comments. Tom?
Thank you. In terms of the legalities of it, I have often said that in our culture it needs to be easier to get a divorce, but more difficult to get married. And what I mean by that is one of the things that we've uncovered here is that marriage preparation is really critical, and helping people to understand that this is more than just that temporary love or that beauty that attractiveness that is going to fade. This is a lifetime of being together. Communication. I don't care whether we're in COVID time or not. That is a key to being together with anybody for a long period of time, particularly in building a household with someone.
Thank you. Kenneth?
Yes, Dan mentioned that he goes to see the dentist to take care of his teeth. He goes to the doctor for physicals. One of the problems is that we do not always choose the best person to go to see. And there are lots of quacks out there in relationship to counseling and giving guidance to people who are in marital problems. And I think that it is really important in a situation like this that a person seeks out the very best person who can help you with your issues. Not everyone can help you with your issues. And so in this time of COVID, that it bodes well if you are in a situation of looking at a divorce or facing a divorce or whatever, that you get a person who can specifically help you with your specific issues that you have. And I say that with deepest respect for all the different professions, but particularly in this time of COVID and with all the divorces going on. There are very distinct types of people who can be more helpful than others. People get married for all kinds of reasons, and God's sovereignty allows us to do that in God's free will. But I think it is also important to know that, sometimes these things just simply do not work. And that while for many of us divorce carries an enormous stigma, I think that it is always important to God moves and works, even through the times of divorce. And the good news is indeed that there's always grace, hope, and forgiveness, as well as new life.
Thank you. Carl?
Yeah. I also hope that people understand that marriages have gone through crises and come out even stronger. That just because there's a crisis doesn't mean that one gives up hope either. Research shows that how you communicate through your arguments and solve your problems in some tremendous stress can be empowering to a marriage as well. And I don't mean that to throw out false hope, but I also don't want to just eliminate it. And you mentioned quacks. I want to recommend a resource to our viewers, and that's the doctors John and Julie Gottman, who have some tremendous materials in couples therapy. It's research-based, and I know that people at Concordia utilize their materials. I've utilized their materials. It's powerful stuff. And if you can find a therapist who's connected with them, that's just one suggestion. I mean, there are many good ones.
Can you mention their name again for us?
Doctors John and Julie Gottman, and they have the Gottman Institute. If you go to the web, you'll be able to find it.
And they'll send you a daily email if you want them to, a marriage minute every day or so.
Yeah.
And I subscribe. It's a wonderful deal.
Good.
Dan?
I think also one of the things that we often forget is that, you know, a marriage is a partnership between two individuals. And I think a lot of times what happens in these moments of crisis and stress is not only do we sometimes expose the weaknesses of a marriage, but we discover our own inner weaknesses. And I think sometimes the best thing we can do to help solidify our marriages is to do the introspective work of understanding our own selves, our own fears, our own traumas, our own disappointments, our own yearnings. Because I think sometimes the better we understand ourselves, the more effective we can be, the more thoughtful we can be in the partnerships and the marriages and the households that we seek to build with each other. And I'm hopeful that if we can avail ourselves and see this as a priority, like our physical health or our mental health, then we will have stronger households who can withstand the storms of something as difficult as this pandemic.
Thank you. I'm really blessed to hear everybody's comments today. These are important ones. I've been married not quite as long as Tom, but we have had times of ease and times of challenge.
Of course, I was married when I was 6 years old.
I understand that. It had to have been.
I didn't know that.
The charter of the American Religious Town Hall provides that Roman Catholics, Protestants, Jews, educators, and others may appear on this program and can declare their beliefs without hesitancy. And the rest of the members of the panel will uphold and guarantee that American right to all who will appear, irrespective of race or creed, so that the rest of the world can see that here in America, we believe in civil and religious freedom, not only in theory, but in reality. And now, friends, until next week at the same time and over the very same channel or on YouTube, the American Religious Town Hall meeting stands adjourned. And may the God of all of us bless all of you.